Thank you, Travis, and good morning to everyone. June 3rd, it's certainly been a year to forget already, but we've got to keep the show going, absolutely. And our little piece of this COVID puzzle hopefully will help you in bringing your people back and do it safely and do it proper within your company policies and guidelines. A couple of things before I get started. I am now an expert at all of this for about a month and a half, just like the rest of you. This is by far the most fluid situation I've ever seen. It changes almost daily, and that I know everyone is affected on all these different changes for different reasons. Our piece of the puzzle, especially when we talk about the antibody testing, it changes all the time. So what I present to you today has probably changed this morning or will change this afternoon. So please understand that I'm giving you as fresh an outlook as I can. Any of the COVID guidelines or steps to be taken, I have taken from proper places like the CDC, the EEOC. And then I have a couple of areas where I throw some questions out to just generate thought. We'll get started, and certainly if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. And again, if you see this presentation via online access on demand, if you will, please feel free to reach out to us, to my company, to myself directly. I'm sure Travis will make that information available. Yes. We'd be happy to answer. We want to be a part of the solution in helping people come back to the office. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share the screen here. Become a Zoom expert as well. It's getting hot up here on the downtown building. I don't remember the name of which building I'm sitting on top of, but I should be able to get through this in about 25 minutes or so. If you have questions, we have a small group. Travis, is it okay if people interrupt and ask questions now?
Absolutely. I can, if you have questions or anything you want to add to Michael's comments, feel free to unmute yourself, and you're welcome to do that.
Yep, you will not bother me interrupting me with a question. I work better that way. So, all right, so everybody can see our screen now, the reboarding process screen. We're good to go. Okay, so let's go over here. All right, we're open. Right? Just about. We're just about open. Everybody's starting to kind of creep back into their offices. I know the chamber's back in there this week. My office, we've got people staffed in there to handle some drug testing, but not everybody's there at one time. So we're beginning to open up. So this is as of yesterday. This is from the New York Times. The status of the stay-at-home orders, and you can see that just about every state is opening back up. Restrictions are being lifted. You do see out west, it is more regional, and in some of the hot spots like Michigan, Illinois, New York, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, they have regional openings. And then New Jersey is one of the few states that still has probably the more strict restrictions right now. But that again, that will change today or tomorrow. It's such a fluid situation. I don't want to get into the whole, what is COVID, but it is pretty amazing just to look at how quickly Americans lost jobs in April. Over 20 million people lost their job, and that number's gone up, since you get through May. It just was like a faucet. Everything just stopped. 6 million 6 million employees in the small business arena, Medium had 5.2 roughly, and then large almost 9 million. It's just unprecedented. Many people were laid off, many people were furloughed, and many people don't know what the difference is. So today we're going to kind of look at that from a society of human resource management perspective, and talk through what you should do with each different type, furloughed or laid off. The most important thing to remember is to be consistent with your company policy. And I'm sure every one of you has a COVID-19 policy in place, right? Of course you don't. So it's just important to follow your policy as best you can. This is a great time to pull your policy out and review some of those tricky things that you just weren't real familiar with because they just didn't happen that often. And that has to do with layoffs and furloughs. If you have questions, certainly go to your management teams, go to your boards, and make sure everyone understands what they need to do based on their company policy. Can't say that enough. You have to make adjustments in your policy. That's when this is the time to do that. All right, so again, this is SHRM's definitions, not Michael's definitions, of furlough versus layoff. So a furlough is a mandatory temporary leave of absence. Okay, so you don't fire, you don't cut ties, you just basically stop paying and folks stop working. But you haven't severed those ties with an individual. When you lay someone off, it's generally considered a separation from employment. So that's when you cut the ties, you stop paying, you cut the benefits. So that's typically a big difference when it comes to the reboarding process, okay? So if you have a furloughed employee, this is what we recommend. All right, you need to, number one, when you're bringing them back in, and please, if I may, just back up 1 second. What I'm going to go through now are a series of steps that you could begin to build this whole reboarding process. Okay, so this is just one part of a bigger product you could put together. So if it's a furloughed employee, you want to confirm they've signed that authorization and disclosure form. In our world, that's the number one lawsuit that companies lose because they don't have the authorization and disclosure forms signed by the individual. So let's confirm that they're signed. And this is probably a good time to go ahead and review with your provider. Do you have the most up-to-date authorization and disclosure forms anyway? So it's a good time to do both of those. If they have signed it, then great, you're probably done. But what we recommend is the best practice would be to go ahead and have them to sign a new one, because you're probably going to find out that you're working with an old authorization form, and that will get you in just as much trouble as not having one. So good time to review both of those. Now, with a furloughed employee, since you didn't terminate them, you technically are not rehiring them. You're just bringing them back. So you can choose to run a background check. If you choose to run a background check, we recommend that you do whatever you did in the new hire process. That keeps it consistent with what your policy says. You can exclude any of the employment or education verifications because don't know if they'll change due to COVID. Those typically stay the same. But things that could change are DUIs, assault arrests, drug arrests. There's all kinds of things that can happen when you're forced to stay in your home, and you could be arrested, charged. Conviction, maybe not so much because the courts just opened up yesterday or Monday, and that's on a limited basis. But you certainly want to protect your company, your employees, and the general public. Now, if you do normally drug test and you want to do a drug test on a furloughed employee, we recommend you code it as a return to duty. Okay, that would be the permissible purpose for the test. Code it as a return to duty. All right, laid off employees. So this is the employee that you actually cut ties with, and essentially you terminated. So you have to start over because you're rehiring this individual. So you need to follow all of your rehire or new hire process. Make sure they re-sign and redate the authorization and disclosure form. Okay. You also, with the furloughed, do the new hire package that you typically run. Okay. Again, you can exclude the employment or education verifications because those things, they're not going to change. Okay. But your criminal, your motor vehicle reports, those types of things could change. And for your drug testing piece, the permissible purpose would be pre-employment because you're rehiring them. Okay. So it's a pre-employment drug test, not a return to duty. And it's not a random, and it's not a for cause suspicion. It's a pre-employment drug test. Okay. The most important thing is just be consistent across the board. Okay. All right. So once you've done the background check or drug test piece of it, maybe the next thing you build is a health questionnaire. Okay. A lot of folks are talking about that, and there's a lot of different ways to do this. And depending on your resources, you can do it different ways. I've seen it as simple as a piece of paper with a couple of questions on it, all the way up to a fancy app that the employee can wake up every morning and do the questionnaire on the app before they even leave the house. So it's just this is a very cost-effective way to start the assessment process. How many times have you been asked, do you have any signs or symptoms in the past 2 months? Everybody asks it just about everywhere you go. So this employee questionnaire would be to evaluate signs and symptoms. This is the honor system, right? So you're just asking, and you're hoping that they're going to tell the truth. And I think the majority of people are. If they have signs or symptoms, they're not going to. You hope that they're not going to come in here. But the idea is to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and reduce the potential risks of exposure to your workforce and any visitors of the workforce. And if your company is outward facing, meaning they deal with the general public, then you need to make sure you've got to take all the steps you possibly can to help prevent the spread of this. So inquiries into an employee's symptoms, even if disability related, are considered justified by the EEOC as a reasonable belief based on objective evidence that the severe form of pandemic influenza poses a direct threat. So what that means is EEOC says that it's okay to ask about signs and symptoms because this is such a severe direct threat. Okay, so you must maintain all this information confidentially. Okay, it has to be kept confidentially because you don't want to conflict with any ADA rules. Okay. Here's a quick example of what one could look like. This is a two-pager. I literally found hundreds of these online. I liked this one because it seemed simple. Now it's 2 pages. It's a lot of questions. And the question is, are you going to do this every single day? Are you going to make someone fill this out every single day? Or do you do it every other day? Do you do it once a week? Do you do it once? Those are questions you have to determine and figure out based on your situation.